There are new reports tonight from the New York Times and Newsweek magazine that a lobbying firm at which Senator John McCain's campaign manager, Rick Davis, was once a partner, was paid $15,000 a month by mortgage giant Freddie Mac until last month. Last month? Last month, the McCain camp says that Rick Davis had broken ties with that company. Asked about the reports by NBC's Kelly O'Donnell and CNBC's John Harwood, McCain's campaign senior advisors said this, quote, Rick Davis was never a lobbyist for Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. Senator McCain's positions on policy matters are based upon what he believes to be in the public interest, period. The McCain campaign also added, quote, Rick Davis left Davis Manafort, that's the lobbying firm, and stopped taking salary from the firm in 2006. Sunday night, McCain said Davis had no involvement with Freddie Mac.
My campaign manager has stopped that, has had nothing to do with it since, and I'll be glad to have his record examined by anybody who wants to look at it.
So what, if anything, does all of that money paid by Freddie Mac to the firm from which Rick Davis has taken leave add up to politically? Joining us now is Michael Isikoff, investigative correspondent for Newsweek magazine. He's here and reporting this news at newsweek.com tonight. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you.
We knew before that Rick Davis was involved in a group that had been set up by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to advocate for its interests, chiefly less regulation, that he had been paid $30,000 a month at some point in his past to be involved with that group. What's the new information, and how does it connect to that earlier story?
Well, the new information is this. After that story the other day, which the New York Times reported on, the McCain campaign came back with a ferocious pushback and saying this was a totally unfair, lowball hit against Rick Davis, that he severed his ties to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac back at the end of 2005 when this advocacy group, the Homeownership Alliance, was dissolved. And McCain, as we just saw, said that it was over at the end of 2005. And Rick Davis said he hasn't been involved at all in any activity, housing-related activity, since then. Well, they left out something that, I think a lot of people could find fairly significant, which is that after the Home Ownership Alliance ended at the end of 2005, Rick Davis went back to Freddie Mac and said, I would still like to be paid, according to our reporting tonight on this, and asked for a consulting arrangement to continue. And an arrangement was entered into, according to our sources, basically because of his relationship with John McCain, that Freddie Mac put Davis Manafort, Rick Davis's consulting firm, on a $15,000 a month retainer in 2006, and we are told because of his association with John McCain, you didn't want to say no to John McCain's campaign manager, as one source put it to us. Now, that relationship has continued ever since. Davis has severed his relationship, severed his payments from Davis Manafort. He is no longer participating in Davis Manafort. At some point, we don't know when he severed that relationship. But here's the thing, and here's why I think this could be a bigger deal. The payments continued for what? We're told that no work has been performed under this consulting arrangement with Davis Manafort. There's nobody else at Davis Manafort who is doing work for this $15,000 a month consulting arrangement. Rick Davis attended a PAC meeting of Freddie Mac in October 2006. He attended a few breakfasts. But other than that, this money has been doled out month by month until last month. And I think people may look at this and say, well, wait a second, this is an arrangement that Rick Davis set up, and it was still being paid by this entity, Freddie Mac. Now the taxpayers are having to bail out.
When the John McCain campaign was asked about this tonight, they are saying that Rick Davis has never lobbied for Freddie Mac. They are pushing back very hard on your reporting here. We saw them push back very hard against the New York Times' reporting on the earlier arrangement, the arrangement that ended at the end of 2005, earlier this week, to the point of attacking the New York Times, the very idea that they're even a journalistic institution. What do you make of the pushback, and are you experiencing it personally tonight?
I think this is, one of the problems you get into when you sort of forget about the press and say we're going to declare war on the press is you don't go through a filter of trying to examine your own statements before you make them and try to think about how it's going to play in the press. And if the McCain campaign knew 2 nights ago that Rick Davis's lobbying firm was being paid $15,000 a month by Freddie Mac, it's hard to imagine that they would have made and cared about how the press might report that. It's hard to imagine that John McCain would have been out there Sunday night saying he's had no relationship with Freddie Mac for the last 3 years, and Rick Davis himself would have gone on that conference call and attacked the New York Times story and say, as he did, there's been no activity. He may be true that there's been no activity, but the payments to his firm have continued. I think it's going to be hard for the McCain campaign and Rick Davis to explain why those payments continued.
Right. And saying that you didn't do any work for the money makes us worry more about the money, not less. Michael Isikoff, investigative correspondent for Newsweek magazine, thank you and congratulations on the scoop.
Thank you.
Will there be political fallout to this apparently continually evolving scandal? Do advisors matter to voters? Is lobbyist, admittedly a very boring word, does it become politically exciting when it's paired with a massive freak show of a Wall Street meltdown? Rosa Brooks, columnist for the Los Angeles Times, joins us now. Rosa, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here, Rachel.
Looking at this new reporting that Rick Davis's lobbying firm may have been being paid by Freddie Mac to the tune of $15,000 a month, even after Rick Davis severed his ties, and there's this big pushback from the McCain campaign. Do you see this having political resonance, or is this complicated stuff about people who are removed from the candidate himself?
I think it has political resonance. I think that there are 2 issues here, both of which might be a little bit disturbing to voters trying to make up their minds. One of the things that's disturbing is the hypocrisy / dishonesty piece of this. It's a little bit weird, as Michael Isikoff just said, to have the McCain campaign going out and saying, no connection to these people, absolutely not, certainly no lobbying, no nothing. And then it turns out that these payments to Davis's firm were continuing till a month ago. He may not be getting that money going into his personal bank account right now, but this is still his firm. He's presumably intends to go back to it at some point. And as you said yourself, in some ways it's even worse if he's not doing any work for it. The money's just piling up, waiting for, it's like saying, don't pay me, why don't you just give those payments to my brother over here for a while I do something else. And I think to be denying it, saying this wasn't happening, gets very, if I may say so, it's sort of Clinton-esque. It gets into depends what the meaning of is, depends what the meaning of lobby is. It looks pretty yucky, and it's particularly hypocritical looking at a time when the McCain campaign is trying very, very hard to tar Obama with associations, very, questionable claims about associations, far down the line with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, while meanwhile the McCain campaign is just lying like crazy about its own much closer links to the very same mortgage giants that are part of the root of this whole mess that we're in right now. So that I think is one of the problems, and it's only one. The other is the potential conflict of interest issues.
The substantive issues, the conflict of interest issues, and then the awkward lying about those issues, or at least seeming to be caught out on those issues again and again and again.
Yeah.
Rosa Brooks, the Los Angeles Times columnist, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.